Welcome to the 27th annual Hunger Games. To today's Monkeypod webinar, the Zapier Showcase. What is up, Amanda? What's up, Andy? We've got B on, Benjamin, Dylan, Yana from the UK. Yana was one of my very first Infusionsoft onboarding clients back in 2012. Richard, Renee, Rebecca. Rebecca has perhaps one of the coolest businesses I've ever encountered, which is this collection of rental properties all up and down the LA area, but California in general. And one is the Hicksville trailer place, which keeps getting written up in like trendy magazines and stuff. So what is up, Rebecca? Lots of people joining. My man Marv is on, although I think he goes by Mike. So I call him Marv, which is a syllable of a name that he doesn't use because we're that close. But thanks for joining us live today, guys. As you can see, depending on the view that we have selected, I am surrounded by good-looking and knowledgeable friends of mine, and also Josh Satterlee. So we got a real good panel here, and I'm excited to share with you a bunch of real-world use cases for, are we still laughing at that? Come on. I'm excited to share with you a bunch of real-world use cases for Zapier. Okay, so let's kick it off with a little bit of context. When I worked at Infusionsoft, I left in 2015, but prior to that, I was an Infusionsoft employee. It was called Infusionsoft at the time, so I am giving it a service by referencing that. But I was aware of all of the plugins that were out there, but I focused on only using the native features of the software. And so when I became a small business owner, I realized, okay, that's not realistic. As powerful as Keep is, you're just bound to encounter some of those natural limitations. And that is why the landscape of plugins is there. That's why there are so many add-ons, and it just, it's not an admission of a failure. It's not a shortcoming of the software. It's just, there's more that our businesses need. I like to say Keep is an all-in-one solution until you need something it doesn't do, and then you need another tool or solution to add onto it. So it took me a little while to really fully embrace that. And Zapier is the one tool that sort of eluded me, where I knew it was powerful because people I trusted and respect depended on it all the time, but I didn't quite get what it did. And I think the reason I didn't quite get what it did was because everyone used it a little bit differently. And so it was tough for me to put it into a bucket, put it into a category, because it's so flexible. And so that flexibility made it feel ambiguous. And that drew out the learning curve for me, understanding it, which, as I'm saying that, is sort of true for Keep too. It's a flexible enough tool that it can be hard to pin it down into one specific category. So the goal of today's workshop is to help people contextualize Zapier. I don't have a Zapier affiliate link. They don't have an affiliate program. We're not selling anything here today, although Moshe might have a Zapier course now that I think about it. So we might steer you his direction, but I just think it's powerful, and I want more people to benefit from that if they can. And the best way I know how to do that is by sharing examples from people smarter than me, why I've collected a group of my friends here to share what they depend on. So if you are a Zapier user, our hope is that you'll walk away with some more ideas for how you can use it in your business. If you're not yet a Zapier user, I would love to just give you some a taste of what it does, because maybe it will solve a problem that you have been hung up on in the past and thought, okay, well, that's just a part of my business now. And if we can streamline that or simplify it, that's a win for me for sure. So in the chat, for those of you on live, and we've got almost 40 people on live. That's great. Thanks for being here, guys. In the chat, if you could let us know, just with a number 1, if you're already a Zapier user, type the number 1 in the chat if you are a Zapier user. And if you are not a Zapier user, just type the number 2. If you're hey, I'm just curious, I've heard about it, or maybe you haven't heard about it, but you just trust my recommendations that you're there's got to be something good here. Okay, lots of number 1s here, a couple of number 2s as well. Great. So a good, okay, more 2s coming in. What's up, Dave? How you been, man? And Mike's here too. Awesome. It's good to see, man, there are some names in here for people that I have been connected to for almost a decade, or at least for the majority of Monkeypod's lifespan. So it's really good to have you guys on. I appreciate you. Nick, it's been a while since I've seen Nick in one of these. So I'm glad to have you all here. Okay, so that is the context. That's where we're going. Hopefully everybody's in the right place. I gave myself 10 minutes for intro and I am at 11:09. So Jade, take it away. I don't know.
Nailed
you
it.
wanted to talk. Yeah.
Nailed it. You're doing great. So a couple of things I want to point out that's extra awesome about this. Not only is there going to be like a phenomenal level of expertise that you're going to see here, but also I want to point out we're in 3 different countries. And I think for brevity, if you guys, when it's your turn to show off your Zap, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself for a hot minute, like what city, state, country you're in, and like just, a sentence or two about, what you do in your business, that would be helpful. So I don't have to screw it up for you. But also I really want to reiterate what Greg was saying is like, it's the same for Zapier as it is for Keep. It's like you have it, but you learn from seeing the way that other people use it. I've been a Greg Jenkins fangirl for well over 5 years. I love the campaign breakdowns, the information, just pop in the hood basically. And I learned more from that than like trying to do things myself in the dark. So that's really why we're doing this today, because Zapier's just too diverse of a tool to, as he said, to put it in a category. So just to get everyone's brains tingling as we get started, before each of the presenters here are going to take, a chunk of time to show you a Zap, we're actually going to go around and say one really cool, like, ooh, ah moment of things. We're going to play a little round of things you didn't know Zapier could do. And with that, I'm going to start with Moshe because it was his idea. You go first, buddy.
All right. So one of the very cool things that you could do with Zapier is track expenses between roommates. We have, we're a bunch of roommates. We all end up buying, whether it's the toilet paper, or the dishwashing detergent or whatever. So we have a quick, easy form that we fill out. We choose which of the roommates are in. Is it a 50-50 split or a manual override? It just logs it to a Google Sheet. And then whenever we text balance to the number, we find out what the balance is. And once a month, we pay each other off.
That deserves a Zoom
applause, Yeah, mic drop, crazy. Guys. Try to follow that one. So Josh, since you were giving him shit, it's your turn.
Yeah, well, I think there are many things that we love. The fact that Zapier does it that we can't see, like it's updating this form and updating these fields and doing 27 other things. But sometimes I want Zapier to do things that I can see. So I set up a little light that if you see it turns on green. Let me turn this off real quick. It turns on green to let me know I have an appointment in 10 minutes because I have gone on a Zoom call and forgot that I have a following appointment. So Zapier turns on a light on my desk to let me know I have an upcoming appointment, green for money, so I don't forget it. And then at the end of the day, it actually turns purple to tell me, go home, Josh, you're done with work.
Power down. Yeah, power down,
yep,
Josh.
Power down.
That's beautiful. Cam, you want to go?
Absolutely. I'm committed to building that exact same Philips Hue setup sometime this week. So thanks for sharing that. I'm from Hamilton, Ontario, and this Zapier can do, but it's that you can put, is there a Zap for that? Up on your screen, you can put an app on the left side, an app on the right side, and scroll down and see all of the triggers and all of the actions that are available to you as a means of doing that. So I don't think I've ever actually anything. I've always made a huge mess, adding a bunch of apps and actions together out, and then building a better one moments later.
That's pretty neat. I didn't know that either. Krista, how about you?
Yeah, so I don't know if you can top any of those, but no, I have what you can do with Zap is if you just have a bulk text or something, you can filter out email addresses from it, or first name, last name, if you have stuff like that. So you can actually split up your text into first name, last name, or just find the email address and then put that into Keep as a contact.
Yeah, I had a similar like epiphany when I discovered like Zapier. Most people think of Zapier as a connector tool, but it also has native functionality. Like there are Zapier features that you can like initiate from Keep, manipulate stuff around, send it back to keep, right? And one of those, which Krista mentioned, is like splitting a name. Or if you get a notification from another system and it's a block of text, there's a Zapier tool to pull an email address out of that. There's just, yeah, so I love the native Zapier steps as well, which I mentioned I was slow in like adopting Zapier. That was a delayed adoption. So it just continues to get more powerful.
Was that going to be yours, Greg?
No, I've got one. So I use Zapier as like a syndication tool to like share my the content that I produce. As you guys know, I am a prolific content producer in terms of my blog and my YouTube channel. And by that, I mean, I can't stop talking, so I just keep recording. But what I do is I set up a Zap that monitors each of those feeds, my blog and my YouTube channel. And when I publish a new item, either a YouTube video or a blog post, Zapier tracks it and then immediately sends it to Twitter. And then it can delay and send it, a week later, or delay and send it a month later. So each time I publish something, I know there's like a cascading waterfall where it's going to be distributed to my different social channels. And I use Zapier to sort of randomize the text that goes out with it. So I have like a spreadsheet of the different, like, hey, check this out, or did you watch this one yet? Here's a good one, of like sort of generic little intros, so it doesn't feel quite so robotic. It picks from that spreadsheet to further personalize the post that it's ultimately going to make. Now,
we all thought you were a human.
Yeah, this is heartbreaking.
You're going to share that one, right?
So the reason I like that so much is because the rest of my social interaction is human, right? It means it's one, like I get to reply to people and have conversations, but like I know that is happening without me thinking about it. So anytime I publish something, I know it's going to get at least 3 tweets, 3 posts to LinkedIn, and 3 posts to Facebook. And like that's going to get some sort of visibility on it. Now, I also, here's a little multiplier for you. I've had a couple of different people who say, Greg, I want to like do that. But they didn't want to set it up for themselves, or they didn't have Zapier. And so they gave me their Twitter credentials. So I added a step in my Zap that tweets on behalf of Jamie DeBose every time I publish a blog post with her consent. She was like, anything you publish, I would share. And it's I was like, I'll set it up for you. That's in my best interest. So I've got a couple of tweets going to other people's Twitter accounts because they trust that the content I'm producing is also going to be a fit for their audience.
Do you have a sign up form for that? Because I would absolutely be on that list. Like, I'm not joking. me. See, everyone's like, add me to that list. Yeah. For paying you for the Zap volume for this.
Like that's it, right? People struggle with like, what do I say on social, right? So you can use Zapier to keep a regular pulse of the types of content. And that's the thing. It doesn't have to be mine. Are there blogs you follow or YouTube channels you follow that you find are consistently valuable? You can set up a tweet to automatically share that content as long as you trust that, like, hey, this is going to be a fit for my audience. And I wouldn't, you want to have a mixture of content. I feel comfortable with it being all of my own, but you wouldn't want to have just Seth Godin's blog and like you're just a Seth Godin retweeting bot, although you could do worse than Seth Godin. But okay, that's enough for me.
And then mine is anytime anything happens that's not Keep related that I want to keep a pulse on, I always apply a tag, and I use Keep as a stopwatch for anything. So like I use Trello for project management. So when a Trello card is created for a process, I apply a tag just so I know how long things have been happening, tick, 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 tick. And I add in, wait 1 month and then apply a delay alert tag. So if things don't move along in my various other tools and digital world that I have going on, I have a dashboard widget that's just delay alert tags so I can see when things get bottlenecked. Okay,
I think that wraps it up. We're all set then, right?
Pretty much. Yeah, so the order we're going to go in today, just so everyone knows what to expect, we are going to go with Cam first because he had the second longest beard. And so Cam, Josh, Moshe, Krista, and if time allows, which I doubt it because your minds are going to be blown, Greg and I can obviously show off some stuff too, but without further ado, Cam, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks so much, Jade and Greg. I really appreciate the invitation to be here. I'm Cameron. I run a company called Venture Launch. We are located in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, but we have clients, I'd like to say, around the world in a couple different continents. So, and we help people with automation. I had a job previously as a business consultant where I did just over 6,000 consultations in 7 years. So I've been able to look kind of behind the curtain of a lot of businesses, and then that led really nicely into learning about sales and marketing automation, and that's what I do now. So enough, Jade? It's enough.
Perfect.
Context? Perfect. All right.
Jump in.
So what I am going to show you today is how I use Zapier to automatically sweep up all of the new recordings that I make in Zoom meetings and place them automatically into Google Drive. I can think of at least 3 big advantages to doing this. And one is the screenshot that's here on the screen. If any of you spend more than a couple of hours a day in Zoom, recording client calls or recording webinars or podcasts or anything like that, your account is inevitably constantly filling up. And actually, the day Greg posted asking for speakers for this event, I got one of these super annoying, you've exceeded your cloud recording storage, and you get some lame 1 gig or 2 gigs or something that is that's included. So I can think of 3 reasons to do this. One is that Google storage is much less expensive than Zoom storage. I apologize, this is Canadian funds, but I think it's $40 US for 100 gigabytes of storage from Zoom, where 200 gigabytes is $4. So for those of you good at math, that's 1/25th the cost per megabyte or gigabyte. So that's one huge reason to do it. Second big reason I would do it is because Google sharing and permissions are more advanced than Zoom's. So you can much fancier. That's true, Greg. If you want to share with somebody and make them a viewer and then take that away later, or make a variety of people viewers without sharing a common password and link, Google's a much more sophisticated platform for secure sharing than I think Zoom is. And third, I record all of my client calls, my coaching calls this way. And I can usually get people their recordings 15, 20, 30 minutes later, because I wait for that Zap to finish and I grab the URL and I share it out with them. And I'm not downloading and uploading files and inevitably never getting to it, which makes my clients feel like I'm consistent. Like we all want to at least feel, if not be, more professional and productive. So those are my 3 big reasons for doing this. And with that, I will show you a method of doing so. I also have a slightly more advanced version that I won't have time to totally demonstrate today, but I'd happily make a video. I'll tell you what it is and happily make a video about it. So really there are 2.
Let me interject, Cameron,
Sure.
Since you gave me an opening there by mentioning you might make a video. We did have a handful of panelists who wanted to be on this call with us today, but the timing didn't work out for them. So they recorded their submissions for this showcase separately. And I will be releasing those out onto the Monkeypod YouTube channel over the upcoming days. I'll happily add one for you, Cameron, as well. If you want to record a deeper dive on, you're welcome to host it on your own channel as well. But my point was that we've got a few more examples sort of lined up or on deck that will be dripped out over the next couple of days. And as we know now, you could expect those to be syndicated to all my social channels in the short-term future as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll tell you what the advanced version is and the use case for it. Actually, I have a client who's actively using the more advanced version. So I'll show it today and then I'll make a video of it later. And your channel is much more popular than mine, so you can put it on yours. So there's 2 phases to the basic version here. And the basic version is one where it's one file. right? The advanced version is for when you have like a multi-stream situation, maybe you're recording a podcast and you're getting a different file for everybody. But this is where there's just one video file coming into the system. So the first phase is to get your Zoom account set up properly, and the second is to get your Zap built. So to get the Zoom account set up properly, there are 3 changes that I need to make. And to make those changes, I'm going to log into my Zoom website address, like the actual web page, not the application. Scroll down here to settings. And then I have to make a couple of security setting changes. The first is that I need to disable the thing that says require users to authenticate to get the recording. So let me make sure I can actually find all of those.
Control F, Control F.
Control F. I did look it up. Require users. Oh, it's not there. Oh, you know what? This is why you made me go first, right?
Let's look more organized later.
Absolutely. So there are 3 settings in here. One of them says that we want to require users to authenticate before downloading their the video recording. We want to toggle that to no, because Zapier is not going to authenticate as a Zoom user. We're going to turn off the thing that says require a password on all of our recordings. And then there's a feature in here called automatically deleting. I must be in the wrong section. Maybe it's account management. I will correct this and I will post a note as the others speak about exactly where it is. But there are 3 settings.
Is it in recordings, Cameron? On the left side, you see it says recordings at the top left.
It's in settings, recording. Okay. Recording at the top. Settings, recording at the top. And require, I knew it was here, requires users to authenticate before viewing. Toggle that to no. Require a passcode to access shared recordings. Toggle that to no. And this third one, I wouldn't do until I've tested my Zap a little bit, but auto delete recordings after days. So I auto delete my recordings every 4 days so that I don't get those notifications that my account is filling up. Thanks, John, for the help there. Now, it might feel a little bit less secure to toggle these to off, but I would argue that it's not less secure because I'm not sharing the URL with anybody, and it's purging out in 4 days. So the possibility of somebody finding that is pretty low because they just don't need to be authenticated that way. So those are how I would get my Zoom account ready to go. And then over here in Zapier, I would connect my Zoom. So I'm going to grab Zoom. When there is a new recording from my work account, I'm going to test that. I made a little test recording, so there should be one sitting there. And there is, it finds it. I am going to go to Google Drive, and I am going to upload a file. Pick a location called Zoom Meetings Recording. So this is a folder that already exists here in my Google Drive. You might have to go back and watch this a little slower later. And then the file that we're creating is that we actually want to take the video files download URL. And as long as there is only one file being created per video, you will be able to grab that recording and get it downloaded into your account. We do not want it to try to convert it. And then I usually say that I want it to be the start time of the meeting, space hyphen space, the date of the meeting, and maybe some other things, but that's usually enough to get it started. So just like that, Zap is built. We're going to give it a little test. It's not instant because it is an entire video file, but you can see that it is starting. And after some number of minutes, this will turn into a proper, real, readable file as a result. So I I know I went first. I have no idea if that was close to the right amount of time, but I'd be happy to answer questions an hour later as Jade wishes. And I will show the two more advanced use cases if you will bear with me for a second. And that is that the most recent client, my customer was recording videos of events and needed to do some editing of the events. He needed to take out personally identifiable information and take out the breakout rooms, but he needed the keynote information to be delivered. So he was recording into multiple streams. So the screen separate from speaker one, separate from speaker two. And that made the first version, the version I just built, break because it couldn't interpret which file I wanted to move. So our solution to that was that we actually created basically the same thing, but we did it in 2 steps. New Zoom recording is sensed. We created a row in a Google Sheet for each and every file that had been created. And then we used a totally separate Zap to sense when a new row was created, make a folder for that entire event and put all of those files into that folder. So this is the advanced version that I'm committing to getting a video for you for Greg's blog. Thanks, everybody.
I love it. I'd love to hear from anyone on live what you guys thought about that, if you could see yourself using it. Cameron, it's just so practical in terms of, you know, paying for storage over here, paying less over here. So why not employ a Zap that just saves me money every single time? I also realized as you were talking, well, first of all, I'd love to know if for the people who are on live, like if you have questions about this or things you want him to elaborate on or things that you might add or adjust or tweak. But one thing that occurred to me, Cameron, is that there might be webinars or trainings or things that you do with Zoom that like you don't need this process to run for. And you could include some like acronym, like put DQ in the title of your Zoom meeting, and then in your Zap you could set up a filter so like it stops if it
100%.
includes that, right? So you could intelligently like route it differently or like have different things happen, you know, based on the way you title your Zoom meetings. Which the filter option, that's the word I was looking for.
That's I think a really smart way to do it is to have a little shorthand. I move all of mine into a secure folder first and then share them out afterwards. Sure. So I kind of don't mind letting them accumulate over in my cloud storage, but you're absolutely right that could happen. And that just made me think of, I said I was going to record the advanced use case. I have a bonus use case that I want to figure out that I haven't done yet. And that is that I wanted to, I have a post-consultation internal form in Keep, right? So I said I was going to do this. The client said he was going to do that. Here are the tasks that we're going to create. And it runs this little campaign to create those tasks and email the client about their commitment. I thought it would be cool to have a little toggle in there to say, is the client expecting a video or not, right? And if that was a yes, could we feed all of the URLs back to Keep, have it run through that tag or that custom field saying, are they expecting this video? Yes. Okay, let's send a link to it.
Yeah,
no?
I mean, you
Let's
can do
not
like
do it.
check boxes in your form and tags.
Yeah.
And,
so if I get, let's say, if I get like, should I say 10 or 5? If I get 5 DMs of people saying that they want me to figure that out, I will commit to building that into my campaign and I'll share a video
there's
on
5
that too.
right here.
Hey,
Boom.
you got 5 on this call, buddy.
5.
I
I could get like
geeking out with you on it.
send me a message and if I get a little crowdsource of it going, I'll build out the campaign for that.
I have a feeling that the follow-up email to this webinar might be like the spiciest of all follow-up emails. And with that,
I'm here for it.
there's more spice. Josh, you're spicy. You know what we should do in the follow-up email? Let's put a picture of Josh and me
A deal.
Yes.
together.
Yes.
As someone Jade has met in person, yeah.
That's right. And possibly, I don't know what the standard deviation of height of Monkeypod Grove members are, but I feel like I'm at one end of the bell curve and Jade is at the other. You know, so
Jade is definitely the end on one side. I don't know. There may be guys taller than us. Yeah.
I've never even been on a bell curve before. That's how small I am.
Awesome. So my name is Josh Satterlee. I'm a chiropractor by trade, and different than a lot of these folks, like I'm not building Infusionsoft campaigns or doing Infusionsoft work as like the core way I make money. I use Keep, and I enjoy it. It works well for my company. And so a lot of these things, I have a ICP essentially person that builds stuff for me, but sometimes I like to mess around because I look at it as a big puzzle, and I think it's super cool. And I think Zapier, like a puzzle, there are a couple tricks that if with a puzzle, if you do the corners first, or that you find all the ones that are your edges, things start making sense. And I think that is what happens here. So when I first started using Infusionsoft, what is now Keep, somebody said a quote that has always stuck with me ever since. And that is, you cannot automate a hug. And I always think about that, like there are certain aspects of our business where we want to make them personal. And then there are certain things where like, I don't care. Like in Cameron's case, like nobody needs to know that I personally uploaded this video. All that we need to know is that the video got uploaded, right? And however that occurred is fine. So I do a podcast, and what I want to do is I started out sending a thank you note. Like I handwrite a thank you note, and I want to send a gift to people for being on my podcast. So what I send is a Yeti tumbler. So let me pull it out so you guys can see it in all its glory. So I got some like customized, like engraved tumblers for my company. And I was like, I want to send this out. And it used to be like, I'd write the little label or I'd take it to the post office. And then one day I was like, dude, I need the ultimate podcast like Zap that puts it all together. So to tell you what ends up happening is after a podcast, I write a thank you card, I shove it in this box, and automatically my guest, their shipping label's already printed and it fits perfectly on this box. And all I have to do is go send it. But I think that honors them in the way I want them to be honored. But I just use Zapier to do every aspect of it except the hug part, which is send them a gift and that. So let me show you what I do. And one thing that I learned is sometimes with Zapier, like in a puzzle, like if you follow the edges, the order you do things can totally change how easy it is. So with me, I started the wrong way. I tried to start with Keep, and I realized I needed to start a different way. So since it's a podcast, I wanted my people to schedule in Calendly. And I think a lot of people use Calendly or a similar service. Oh yeah, that's why this is the ultimate Sunday podcast guest day tumbler campaign only for podsters and pimps. So this is the one, like you have to be an OG to do this. But all joking aside, I wanted it to be super simple for my people to schedule. I didn't want to encumber them with a need to do a bunch of back end work for me. So like at first I started in Keep, I sent them an alert, asked them to fill out a form, and then that form would create this and that. And I felt like it was really clunky. So everybody said, people would say like, do you have a Calendly link? So I just decided to use the Calendly link as the starting place for all my clients. So one thing about Calendly is if we go to Calendly, couple things, you can set up all these different various calls. And in my podcast interview, which is the link I send, one thing I discovered is you can ask a series of questions. So I added some questions in here that are required. So I have name and email, and then my phrasing I worked on, but just in case there's an issue, what's your mobile phone number? Where are you from? And then I just told them, hey, we'd like to send a thank you gift. What's your mailing address? Right? So I just asked them. So they only have to deal with the Calendly link. They don't have to go to a secondary form. They don't have to go to anything else. And then those are all required. So it won't schedule the podcast interview without those. So then I had all that information. I knew it was in Calendly. Here's where the issue goes. One of the things is if you build a Zap to go from Calendly to create an order in like a shipping label thing, it will push every single Calendly appointment. And that's not what I wanted my printer doing. So I had to set up a filter. So with Calendly, it filters out only continue if the event type is a podcast interview. So I had to filter off all the other 9 kinds. And the great news is you don't get charged for what hits the filter. You only get charged in Zapier for what comes out of the filter. So I probably get, for every podcast interview, there's probably 10 other Calendly appointments that get scheduled. And those hit the filter stop, and Zapier doesn't charge me. So I continued that way. And then I had all this text in Calendly, but Calendly doesn't set up text like you want it in your Keep account. So what I did is I had it start cutting apart the text. So the full name, I wanted to split into first name, last name, right? And now I was off to the races. Now here's where I discovered, at first I was shoving it into Keep Max Classic, but one thing I learned too is it's pretty smart to have some redundancy along the way. So I also set it to go to a spreadsheet in Google Sheets, just in case it broke going into Keep. I at least had a place where all that data dumped to, because Calendly's not a good place to keep that. And so it goes to a spreadsheet, and it's right here. I just blacked out here's the names and stuff, but I just blacked out the other stuff. But it puts the name, splits it into first and last, tells me when were they scheduled, so I can go like, who did I talk to in April, and did they get my thing? And then it has their phone number, street address, and all those things that I'm later going to use for that mailing label. So I have it here, and I can look at this later just in case anything happens. Then finally, and this is like the unwritten rule of Zapier, I would say, is if you can get it into Google Sheets, you can do anything with it. Like Zapier and Google Sheets is that's like peanut butter and chocolate. Like they are the perfect combo, and then you can dissect it out of there. But if you can get into Google Sheets, you can find anybody to do anything with it. So, and it's also like redundancy. Nobody charges you, or Google doesn't charge you for all the rows of Google Sheet information. So then it creates a contact or it creates or updates here, because periodically throughout the year, I also want to send emails to people thanking them for being on my podcast. And at the end of the year, we send a Christmas gift, right? But I don't know why. So it updates the contact, applies a tag that they were a guest in 2021. And then finally, it creates an order in Shippo, which is like ShipStation or one of these. And it says, use this information from Calendly. And then I put in the name, and I put in their address from the questions I asked in Calendly. And that's what creates a shipping label. Now, here's another little tip. You can't automate a hug. And also, you may not want to automate everything, because you may get into a situation where you have a bunch of podcasts scheduled with people, and it creates the label and auto charges you, and then those people cancel or reschedule. So you may spend, let's say it costs $8 to send a box this size, and in 1 month I had 11 reschedules. So I had $90 worth of shipping that never went out. So it's a manual step to go into Shippo and hit purchase over here, right? So these are podcast guests, and I want it to be manual to actually charge me for the label. So like I could automate that, but I've decided not to, because I don't want it to just auto charge my account, because so many people reschedule podcasts at the last minute, whatnot. And as soon as they schedule is when Shippo could charge me for that thing. So in the end, all that has to happen is my guest just goes to Calendly, schedules, I answers a few questions, and what I get is the shipping label. Let me just stop sharing. I get the shipping label, I have the box, I write the card, and in 5 minutes later, I have the gift I want going out to them. And I have a record of it in Google Sheets, and their contact's been updated in Keep. And there's some other cool stuff that happens that I can't remember, but it's awesome.
And
I have two comments. Well, one's a question, I guess.
Yeah.
So is there anything that this doesn't yet do that you're like, man, I've got plans to like improve it or to iterate on it or to make it more robust?
No, not yet. I haven't run into that yet. Like it's doing all the steps that I want it to do.
Yeah.
And I'm purposely limiting some. Like I know it could do more, but I'm purposely limiting that.
I'm thinking like, maybe this is too much, but like, is there a way for you to do like inventory where like it decrements the number of mugs you have on hand and then notifies you when it's time to order more, or automatically orders more? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing I was just thinking of. You said, because you have to get them engraved, you have to order them by case. You can't just do a few. So it's 36.
Yeah.
36 at a time. And yeah, when it gets down to like, but there's also a lead time. So you're right. That would be a good one, because I think it takes them 3 to 4 weeks to produce. Sure. And I don't want to be backed up with, for 3 weeks. So maybe when it gets down to like 6 of them left, I would like to order one.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Like we have, Jade and I send out T-shirts, and like she'll message me for our inventory is low, and like I'll get another order, going. We like mix up the designs we order and stuff. So like there's some manual labor in there. But if you're pretty locked and loaded with like the fulfillment house you use and the look and feel of them, that's a process that at the very least you could notify yourself when it's time. But you might also be noticing,
I physically go out in my garage, like there's just a box of them and I can grab one, but it would be great because that's the other thing about Zapier, that there's so many great things, but one of them is what I think, super smart guys like Cam and Moshe and Chris, like you guys will call it data preservation. But one of the reasons to automate things is I don't have to remember the website to go to. I don't have to remember the product to choose. I don't have to remember the order number to reference. I don't have to, if I build it once, let Zapier hold on to that stuff or Google Sheets or whatever, and like, I'm sure with your shirts, like how many sizes, what design, what name of it, and if instead it's on a Google Sheet, you just click like fulfill, that takes so much effort off. We, as a chiropractor, we do some work with attorneys, and those attorneys are asking us about cases. And I've automated some of that because, like, for example, if a case name has a Latino name like Lopez-Mayorga, right? I've learned that it's way better to let Zapier grab that information the first time and then automate certain steps to preserve that name structure, because it got screwed up one time and we had some forms that flipped a name, right? Or took out the hyphen, and it totally breaks the data construct, which creates a lot of problems down the road. So dates, years, names, all those things, sometimes it's better to build them into Zapier, even if it's a simple step, because it preserves the accuracy of it.
Totally. I like what you said. If you can get it into Google Sheets, like you can do anything. That's such a commonality for my Zaps.
Yeah.
Even if it's not part of the automation, like my blog, the blog and YouTube recipes I mentioned, they drop it into a Google Sheet as well, just so that I have a centralized resource that has all of the blog titles, YouTube titles, and the links to them, at hand.
Well, you're literally making reporting for things that don't have reporting. You can just put it into Google Sheets.
And like what Cameron said, like Google and Zoom can hold the recordings, but getting it into Google is not just cheaper. Let's just throw that piece out for a second. What you can do with it once it's in Google is way better. And I would say the same thing. If you ever throw your hands up in Zapier and like, it can't do this, shove that sucker into a Google Sheet and then start looking at your triggers and actions. And you might be surprised at what it can do, because like Calendly, for example, is not nearly as, you can't thin slice it off of Calendly like you can off of Google Sheets, And,
can we get T-shirts that are like, just shove that sucker into Google Sheets? Speaking of Google Sheets, it is, Krista's putting her kids to bed. She's doing great. Speaking of Google Sheets, I would love to transition over to quite literally the integration master. So we went from like Josh, who's like a super excited enthusiast, who's like, I'm not a full-time geek, I just like this, right? And that's pretty cool. That I'm super impressed with the stuff that you've put together and like thought of. And I think it just goes to show the range of like, it doesn't matter your expertise. It's like where your creative mind is at, for sure. So we're quite literally going to hear from, in my opinion, like the preeminent expert in like integration and Zaps and Google Sheets and like making magic happen. This is the guy I call in the middle of the night crying, going, my Google Sheet formulas won't work, and he fixes it, and he's great. I'll just stop talking. Moshe, why don't you take the stage?
So, first of all, thank you so much for that warm intro. Very, very appreciated. And Josh is just in denial, just so that you know, but he is a full-time automation geek. He just pretended. We were hanging out at some conference somewhere in some hotel, and we had nothing better to do than break off into some side room and go build a Zap. And we did that more than once. So, this is just what we do. But we were talking about automating the personal touches. And one of the things that you could do, I know this is unscripted, but you could use automation like a Zap to send you could get a prompt on your phone where it's like, hey, so-and-so's birthday's coming up, and then you reply with a personal message and a text message, and then they'll get a handwritten thank you card through a service like Handy Written. And one of the people here on this call actually demonstrated the fact that automation could be personal. I don't know what her Zap looks like, but I know she uses automation. And I just got this morning in the mail. Definitely customized, because I don't think there are multiple best automation specialists ever mugs that she's sending out. But this was just a thank you from we geeked out on Clubhouse, and this was just a shout out and a thank you. And that was definitely, so leveraging automation to send a personalized gift, she'll have to do a demo on how she manages to personalize things that way. And it came with a beautiful card to go along with that. But the thing that I wanted to geek out today is also a Google Sheets thing, because that's where the best of fun happens. So I didn't have access to the original, so I quickly recreated a partial demo just to give a visual to what it is that we're going to do. But then I'll describe the multitude of steps that are kind of meant to be there in between. But the core power of this is very simple, very straightforward, is not only do you have the power of once things are in Google Sheets, you could do anything, but Google Sheets handles formulas. And this is the coolest part when you handle formulas with Google Sheets. If you add a row with a formula, so let's say you use a basic formula like a VLOOKUP, and if you're not familiar with Google Sheets, it just means a vertical lookup. So you're taking someone's email address and you're looking up what their...
I like that that's a basic formula to you.
Fair. So the idea would be that you could, if you wanted to put, whether it's math, whether it's a lookup of another piece of data, whatever the formula is, when you add that formula, you add a row with the formula, you end up getting the rendered result back in plain text for your next step of your Zap. So if you add, equals 1 + 1 as a formula, you'll end up with the number 2 rendered out so that you could use that. And likewise, if you did a lookup to figure out, based on this trigger, what tag do I need to apply in Infusionsoft, and you had a lookup that determined which of 6 tags need to be applied, you could power that right out of your spreadsheet too. So that's the power of using formulas inside of Google Sheets, because whatever value it renders because of the calculations of the formula is able to be used in your next step, which could also make things super dynamic when you have, if your value is, okay, what spreadsheet should I update? And it will dynamically say, well, depending on which coach you're selecting is which of 15 spreadsheets you should update. So you have infinite customizability when you start leveraging that. But what I'm going to demo is a lot simpler today. So, so this is, let me go ahead and share my screen.
That's part of what I like about conversations like these, is it sort of bookends the complexity with like, you can just do this, or like, look what's possible, right? And I hope everyone watching doesn't feel, I hope you feel encouraged by that. Like, there's just so much potential and flexibility, but you can, as with anything, start super simple and start experiencing, benefits right away. But back to you, Moshe.
Sure, but I want to actually digress. Actually, no, mental note to get back to it later when we do that later thing. But you hit the nail on the head with that, and I have a follow-up thought. But so what this is over here is I figured, what should I demo? And I figured the best way to figure out what to demo is by asking my clients what saved them the most amount of time and had the biggest impact in their business. And this came up with 2 different clients as being by far the most valuable. And to me, it was almost, so to speak, the simplest thing to set up. But sometimes the best apps are the easiest and simplest apps because they fix big problems, even though they're not as sexy on the automation side. And granted, it takes a formula or 2 to make it work. And if anyone needs help doing this, let me know. I'll create a detailed recording on the formula side so that it's scalable and even hand off a template or something like that. But the idea would be like this: leveraging automation. When someone becomes a new client, they get added to the sheet. And since I don't have access to the original client's data, I created a little simulation so that I could show you what that might look like. So I'm going to just click on Simulate Add Contact. And what this does is it sends a webhook to Zapier to add a row to Google Sheets. So if you notice, row 9 does not exist. And I'm just going to click on that. It opens up in a new tab. I get the little success message over here, so I know it worked. I could close this, and now I have row 9 exists. And I just, dynamically did that. So we pretend someone just purchased, and therefore they're on the spreadsheet. Now, the power of this is that what he does is he hand selects. I don't know what his method of who gets invited and whatnot, but some people get a free set of palette knives when they sign up and become a club member, or they're randomly selected. I don't know the exact logic, but he needs to be able to gift them that $50 set of palette knives. And he does not like going into ActiveCampaign, which could be Infusionsoft, but in his case, it's ActiveCampaign. He doesn't like going in there to do it. And so first of all, we created a little hyperlink so that it just dynamically uses the email address so that you could go directly to the contact. Because what it does, and this is again added by Zapier, and this exact same thing would work with Keep, with Infusionsoft, but it puts the link to the ActiveCampaign contact list, and then it has this little indirect formula that knows to read the email address so that it gets appended to the end of that link. So we'll open up that contact inside of ActiveCampaign directly. And then using the very similar structure, this is where we did the magic in this formula, which triggers another zap. So this is really the demo I wanted to show, is this zap in column C. So let me just zoom in a little bit just so it's easier to see. So what we have inside of this formula is it's basically just a hyperlink to a webhook in Zapier, and I'll show you what that means and how you build it. It takes just a second to do once you know that it exists. And all I did is add dynamically, I added the row number and the email address. So that way, when it goes to Zapier, Zapier will know row 9 and the email address from column G, because those are the only two pieces of data you need to do any lookup you could possibly need to update the contact record, get the rest of the data on this row, look them up in another spreadsheet. Whatever you need to do, you're able to do here. So now when we click on gift and click that little hyperlink, again, it just opens up that little window. That part is a little bit annoying, but it's a lot easier than the 12-step process you used to do. And then when you close that, it already is updated. It says invited. And then the steps that happen in between are apply the tag inside of ActiveCampaign. It goes to Help Scout and sends an outbound email to the contact, inviting them to, place their free order for their gift of palette knives. And it also creates a separate log, or unless he uses, this is the log, I don't remember offhand, it's been a while since we set it up, logging every item that's been sent out. And that zap is infinitely customizable in between. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
One thing that, thank you, Greg. One thing too that I think comes along with this is integrating Zapier and transferring to Google Sheets. Google Sheets has a very robust and accurate mobile app. So if you're doing this, for example, salespeople who are out on the road or on planes and cars and everywhere but in front of a laptop, they can very easily send this now by going to the Google Sheets mobile app and firing this off, and I think that is one thing that the Zap enables us to make a much simpler thing for our team members to do, rather than everybody rather than the assumption that everybody's sitting in front of a desktop all day long, because that's just not the current workload, and yet things can get done in 1 second. So I love that aspect of this too, Moshe.
Thank you. And yeah, like this is the thing is like at the end of the day, and I'll show you exactly how to build that Zap. It is very simple and straightforward. As a matter of fact, I built it at the beginning of this call while we were live because the client didn't manage to get me access earlier to the original documents that I was going to use to demonstrate. So we just rebuilt this. And that's how, like, obviously you just don't know what you don't know, but in terms of the mechanics, the simplicity, and it's relatively straightforward. So first of all, you could go zap.new to build a Zap. But once you do that,
Hold on.
You didn't know that?
I did, and then I forgot it, and I appreciate it every time I relearn it. But let's just that's somebody's takeaway. Zap.new is a URL you can type in to begin a new Zap.
and then to set it all up, all you do is type webhooks by Zapier. And while it is premium, I guarantee you, if you start using Zapier, it is your cheapest employee. Spend the money on it, it's worth it. Catch hook and hit continue. You now get this custom webhook URL. This is the URL that does all the magic. So what you want is to put that inside of your spreadsheet. Now, of course, putting in the webhook on its own is a little bit ugly. So the things that you do to prettify it would be you do equals hyperlink and then put in quotations that same URL. And now you could do comma, open quote, and type gift. And again, I could send a template with these formulas so it walks you through what to do. But you now have a prettified version of it. And then conditional formatting takes care of all the coloring for you so you can keep track of what's going on in the sheet. So Zapier doesn't need to manage all that for you. It's just your regular Google Sheet functions that are able to handle that. You just create some rules of conditional formatting. So if it says gift, it's hyperlink is in red. If they're invited, you change the colors. Easy to view and manage. The only thing left to do is add in to this webhook. You want the webhook to know what row it was triggered on. So that's where there is a longer, easier way, but the better way to do it, so to speak, would be using the indirect formula. And then this, again, will, feel free to message me and you'll get this directly so you don't have to kind of take note. But the indirect formula says indirectly give me column G and whatever row I happen to be on. And that's what the indirect formula does for you. And then I do that for both the row number and for the email. So email equals column G. So depending on the row, so G8. And then the row number is, again, dynamically whatever row it's on. So you just add that indirect formula right inside of the URL section of the hyperlink. So this entire, everything that I'm formatting here is part of the hyperlink. And up until, just up until there. So that way whoops, sorry, B. But that way it will send the email address and the row number automatically with that hyperlink. The last thing to know and understand about starting a Zap with a webhook is that when you copy this webhook right into your browser, you could just type question mark and literally type anything equals whatever, and it will send anything as a parameter and the word whatever as the value. So, and you could add multiples. So, and demo equals true. So now I just sent 2 parameters, and that's what we're using the formula to do, is exactly that, just without needing to do it manually. And just to show you how that works inside of Zapier, when you hit continue, test trigger. And if I test my most recent one, I have anything equals whatever and demo equals true. So those are the parts of the Zap that you map right from the hyperlink. So that way it will have the email address and the row number, and you could do whatever you could dream of.
Whatever you can dream of is a really great closing. And I sing things when I'm happy. So I'm not sorry. So anyway.
That was incredible, Moshe. I mean, that was like multiple
so
layers being delivered in every 30 seconds. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot here, and Cameron summarized it pretty well. My takeaway, you can do a simple one-step trigger and response app to get started, or literally build anything to do anything with anything.
Pretty much. And Greg just chatted in. So like, I remember, a couple of years ago, not knowing what HTTP posts were, where to put them in Keep. So Greg has a really awesome YouTube video on that I assure you I'm like half of the views on it. So it's really, really good. And with that, we are going to dip over to Krista. So give us a very quick review of where in the world you are, because it's pretty cool, and what you're going to show us.
Yes, so I'm Krista. I'm from the Netherlands, in Europe. My company is Digital Duchess, and I build marketing automations and also websites and membership sites for people that want to build an online business. And one of my clients does a summit every now and then, and this time we're online summits, and he wants people to have other people submit all their friends and family or whatever, their whole team, everyone. So what he does is he created a Google form where people can add all their team members or their family friends. But then you have this whole row of email addresses and names, because a Google form ends up in a Google Sheet. That's just one line. And then how to get that shit into Keep, because you want to send emails to those friends and family. So let me quickly share my screen. So this is the form, and this is the person who made the ticket purchase, because it's sold, with their email address, and then full name and email address for, in this case, 10. He also had one for 25, but I thought that the 10 would be great. And this is how it ends up. So this is the full name, email address, test, etc. Well, that times 10 or 25, you do not want to do anything with that. So what I basically did is I created a Zap where a row is added in the Google Sheet. And then the trigger is the full name for ticket number 3, because actually, no, sorry. The trigger is the row, column 3, because column 3 is column C, and that is, 1 second, I get a bit confused. Anyway, it's the trigger for the first submission. And then I have 3 steps, because otherwise I need, per email address, I need 1 Zap. So I have 3 steps, and the first one is, if I click here on edit, I filter if there is a full name, because not everybody has 10 submissions. So if there is no full name, then there's no point in continuing with this app. And then after that, I create a contact in Keep. And I apply tags and all of that. I'm not going to show that, because I assume that that will be okay. And then I do the same for the next email address and the next email address. And then, so this is for the gifted tickets 2, 3, and 4. And then I have another Zap, because I can only go into 3 steps per Zap. So I have another Zap somewhere. 5, 6, and, oh shit, I took the same one. Sorry.
Hey, I don't know if everybody noticed this, but Zapier will now let you do folders for these various Zaps, so you can classify.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Wink.
Not shade. It really is brand new.
yeah, no, I know. I have that for
Very recent.
several clients, but not for this one. So, and then here, the trigger, because that's where the issue is the full name for ticket number 5. And that is, oh, right, this is where it is. The column is the full name for ticket number 5. And then that way, if this one only goes when number 5 is filled, and then I can do the rest. And the last one triggers for ticket number 7 or 8.
8, 9, 10. Yeah.
Exactly. And that way, I have all of the submissions in, well, for this in case in 3 zaps, but everybody has the right tag and the right and the email address. And I also fill in Keep then who was the person who gifted the ticket. But this way, everybody gets their emails. And also when the summit is, they all got notifications with that the summit started and all of that.
And so there's Cameron commented like, hey, I struggle with this all the time. I think this is a fairly, like, your situation is unique to this summit, but being able to, have one person fill out a form and have multiple contacts be created is not an uncommon scenario. And most internal solutions require the use of like a bunch of custom fields to collect it. And then you can get creative with how you pass it around. But by using a Google form, you don't have any custom fields devoted to this other than maybe like the number of guests the original person is bringing. But I don't even know if you need that in the CRM.
No, I don't. But yeah, you could do that too. But this was a pretty nice puzzle.
I love it.
Yeah.
Ben asked, oh, that's about the HTTP post video. So I linked to the YouTube location of it in the chat above. Jade just dropped it in again. But I think there's a blog post for it as well on the Monkeypod blog. If you search Zapier on my blog, there's a handful there. Rebecca said this was super helpful, Krista. Lots of use cases. I think anyone who's doing like anyone who's working with groups, whether it's like an employer and their team, or it's like a family or a parent child, like karate camp, like anytime you need multiple individuals tied together, or Cameron mentioned umbrella licenses in an LMS, like somebody buying course access for a team that they need to train up, right? This is a good way to kind of couple those. What's up, Josh?
We have a class. Here's another use case where you have to split it up. We have a class and people will say like, hey, I'm a licensed chiropractor in Utah, Arizona, and whatever. And we have to collect their license number for each of those states. And then it has to kick off other automation. But the problem is that I've struggled with is most people only have one state, but if you can allow it to go to 2, 3, 4, because the people that have multiple usually have a lot, and that would be very helpful to split that up to use it. But I guess that's a little different than additional contacts.
Well, one thing I wanted to point out too is that it took me, how Greg was talking about, like, well, I learned some stuff a little late. Like one lesson that like I'm really appreciating now that took me way too long to learn. So if you're new, take this right now, is that you can trigger a zap off of anything. People tend to make things too complicated. So they're like, well, I have to do it like this. No, just like let it trigger and then filter out later, and you won't be charged for the zap unless it actually runs. So you don't have to overcomplicate it.
Yeah, when we talk about being charged, I think Jade means like there's your Zapier account will have like the number of zaps you get and then the number of tasks you have on your current plan. And tasks are the individual steps in a zap, excluding the trigger step. So if you trigger a zap, but then a filter prevents the rest of it from running, you're not using up tasks with that is I think the punchline there. But I know that like the Zapier terminology can be a little, I don't know, it can be like it's a different language if you're not yet a Zapier user, or if you're not, crystal clear on what those different tiers are. Okay. Guys, this was awesome. I know we're a few minutes over on time, and I know it's like probably 10 p.m. for Krista, but I would love to do our contest and like sort of wrap up the formal part of this webinar, give away a t-shirt. And then I'm happy to stick around and do a little Q&A or share a few more of Jade and my recipes if we'd like. But I know if any of the panelists needs to run, or if anyone in the chat needs to jump off as well, I appreciate you guys hanging out with us, and I want to be respectful of your time as well. So
yeah, and panelists, if you guys want to jump in and help answer some of the questions in the chat while we do the drawing, that would be super great.
Okay, so first up, Jade has a handy dandy wheel of names populated with the contest participants from the beginning of the call. Thank you guys so much for helping share this. Ben, Melissa, Melody, Rebecca, Josh, Yana, Dylan, etc. So we're going to spin this wheel once, and we are going to give away a Monkeypod t-shirt to whoever it lands on. Go ahead and spin that wheel, Jade. And for whoever for whoever that is, we'll just need your t-shirt size and your mailing address, and you can get that to, Mr. Benjamin Cipher. Congratulations. So just drop an email to jade@monkeypodmarketing.com or reply to any of my automated emails with your shirt size and your mailing address, and we will get you hooked up. Congrats. And then for anyone who wanted to participate, but missed the boat or is watching the replay here, here's the details for the second contest here. So if you go back to the Monkeypod Marketing Facebook page, I'll just show you where to go here. If you pull it up on your phone or on your desktop, you search Monkeypod Marketing, you should be able to find this post where we said live now, the Zapier showcase. And then all you need to do is in the next 24 hours, come back to this post and just drop a comment with a Zap you plan to implement or an idea you got from this call. So in the next 24 hours, come back to this post, leave a comment with something you're going to do because of your participation in this webinar or because you watched the replay. And 24 hours from right now, Jade or I will choose a winner at random from the people who have left a comment there. And I'll be honest,
I do take compliments if you wanted a little extra.
That's right. If you want to grease the wheels, we are. I was going to say we're scrupulous. We are an unscrupulous bunch who is not above bribes, and you are more than welcome to reach out to Jade or I and grease the proverbial wheel there. So, guys, let me just pause for a moment and shine a light on our generous and wise panelists. Thank you so much for joining, Josh, Cameron, Krista, Moshe. I appreciate you all so much. This was super fun. I know it's been a little chaotic behind the scenes getting things organized for this. This is our biggest panel that we have done. But if I do say so myself, we kind of crushed it. I feel good. So thank you all. Let's consider this feel free to doff any metaphorical caps you might be wearing. For the attendees who are on live, please, if you've got questions, if there's anything else you'd love to hear from, please feel free to fill that chat with your comments or questions or ideas, and we will stick around. But if you need to bounce, this is the bounce time. Adios.